So as an architect and curator that worked together with the curatorial team, we were in total 4 curators. There was an art anthropologist, Michaela Oberhofer, who selected the objects to be part of the exhibition. And we had Esther Tisa Francini, who is a historian that worked on the provenance research. Then we had Josephine Ebwebe, who worked as a performance, as she has a performance background, and she created a performance that also comes on loop as a sound every 40 minutes, and myself, which had the dual role as curator and scenographer. So taking into account my background as an architect, we always start from a macro-micro or a micro-macro approach. After having explained that there are pioneer architects that have used tradition as a standing point to then eventually incorporate innovation, here I'm going to look at Mohoski's Nigerian traditional architecture that was written in 1962. It just so happened that my late grandfather had worked with him in also documenting the Eastern Igbo architectural typology. And where we are standing right now is something that we would call the inner courtyard. The courtyard that represents a very important fundamental trait with regards to the humidity, cross ventilation and lighting, but also for purposes that involve religion and coming in to perform, and other very essential aspects that were part of the Benin Palace and the Benin Empire. So taking into account traditional architecture, we are sitting in a representation of the palace's courtyard, the Oba. And as we can see, we have about 4 main islands or stations. On top of every station, you have a proverb. And the proverb comes from the Benin philosophy and poetry in order to explain something. Right here, for instance, this is the island of religion. And it says that Agauba Banaga Swasa. You worship the Oba the way you worship God. Now, trying to understand the fact that a number of the artifacts that are being presented in this exhibition have religious and spiritual backgrounds, as I also needed to learn about what this meant. So I went into the philosophy and researched just to understand for them, what is the beginning of time? How do we understand their concept of spirituality and religion? And what is the proverb that can help me adapt this? So in the Benin Empire, they have their genesis that starts from a shell, the shell of a snail. And from this pours out an infinite amount of sand that fills the cosmos. That is their genesis. So when we're talking about infinity and a snail sequence that comes out, and following that, the proverb is Agbon Robion, which means the world is a triangle. Now, nature in its perfection is what has and always does influence mathematics. And when we come into the concept of infinity and a sequence, I went into the development of mathematics and sequences such as Fibonacci's sequence. And from Fibonacci's sequence, when we come into the triangle, when we have a fractal, fractals mean when you zoom in till infinity or you zoom out till infinity, you have the same geometric form. And when it comes to triangles, we go into Sierpinski's triangle, which was coined by Mandelbrot in 1978, and the mathematician. But we find out that when we look at the nature of all the spiritual and religious subject objects of the Benin Empire, we are talking about fractal designs within the concept of the numerology of 3, the trigonometry of 3. So you have Agbon Robion, the world is a triangle, the infinity of the sequence of Fibonacci that talks about how the world began, and we have the concept of the courtyard, which is part of their traditional architectural Beispiel, as they say, typology. And this here is the first prototype that was used in the development of this exhibition, which is a fractal of triangles. But there was a specific word that was also important to incorporate within the curatorial conceptualization, which was multi-perspectivity. Now, when we take multi-perspectivity and we shift the perspective of a triangle to another, we realize that we're working with illusions. And this is exactly where the illusion of lenticulars was born, when we bring in the merge of mathematical concept with the triangle. And this is where we are sitting. The entire exhibition is based on the structure of lenticulars that unfold into the walls of Benin. And the last anecdote to add, the importance of the walls of Benin, they were defense moats. And these defense moats of the ancient kingdom were very important because they had a fractal sequence according to each neighborhood that they incorporated. They had street lamps that were with palm oil for the night, at night, and the wall's length in total was about 16,000 kilometers long. The Great Wall of China was 21,000 kilometers long. So this was an incredible empire at the time. And this is where the concept comes, where you have the unfolding of the walls that also incorporate the inner courtyard of the palace. And then I will explain after the lenticular game, which is the play of illusions that goes through multi-perspectivity as the tool to decolonize. So let's continue.